Welcome to the Workplace Minute, powered by H3HR Advisors and sponsored by WorkHuman. Thanks for joining me for a quick update on what's important in the world of work. My name is Steve Boese. Today in the Workplace Minute, we are examining an important new study about artificial intelligence and hiring and a disturbing possibility it raises. AI systems may do more than reproduce the biases contained in their training data. As they gain experience and receive feedback, they may develop entirely new biases all on their own. Let's dive in. Researchers from Princeton University and the University of Chicago tested several leading large language models in a simulated hiring exercise. The models, which included systems from OpenAI, Anthropic, Google, and others, were asked to hire candidates for 20 different occupations, including doctors, lawyers, childcare workers, and janitors. The candidates belonged to 4 fictional ethnic groups, and every candidate had exactly the same probability of succeeding in any job. And after each hiring decision, the AI model was told whether the selected candidate had succeeded. The models were then asked to use that experience to make the next hiring decision. Because the candidate groups were fictional and all were equally qualified, there was no legitimate reason to associate any group with any particular occupation. But that's exactly what the AI models began to do. An unsuccessful outcome involving one member of a group could cause the model to make assumptions about everybody else in the group. And if a candidate from one fictional ethnic group failed as a doctor, say, the model became less likely to hire other members of that group as doctors. It began steering them towards jobs of the model associated with lower levels of things like warmth, competence, or professional status, like the janitor roles. Over time, the AI systems effectively segregated the groups into different occupational categories. And on the researchers' measurement of occupational segregation, the language models exhibited substantially more stereotyping than the human participants in the study on which this experiment was based. So some of the newest reasoning models produced the most extreme results. The study, titled Large Language Models Develop Novel Social Biases Through Adaptive Exploration, argued that these systems are not simply passive mirrors of discrimination already found in society or somehow introduced from the human biases of their developers. They argue that the AI models can spontaneously create new social stereotypes from limited experience, even when the groups involved have no actual differences. The underlying problem involves what the researchers call the exploration-exploitation dilemma. When making repeated decisions, a person or a machine can exploit what appears to have worked in the past or continue exploring other possibilities. The models in the experiment tended to settle on an explanation too quickly. They treated a handful of random outcomes as evidence of meaningful group differences and then repeatedly reinforced those assumptions in their subsequent hiring decisions. This is particularly concerning because generalization is one of the capabilities that makes advanced AI useful. A model that can identify a pattern from a small number of examples can solve problems faster and make useful predictions. But in a social setting, however, that same capability can become stereotyping. The model finds a pattern where none exists and then applies it to every person it associates within the group. Simply instructing the models to behave fairly did not eliminate the problem. Bias declined much more significantly when the researchers changed the model's actual objective by rewarding both successful and diverse hiring. Bias also declined when the model received relevant, individualized information about each person instead of relying primarily on group identity. That finding should matter to anyone designing or purchasing AI hiring technology. Fairness can't be treated as just a sentence to add to a prompt, a statement in a vendor's responsible AI policy, or generalized instruction telling the system to not discriminate. Fairness has to be incorporated into the data, objectives, testing, feedback mechanisms, and the operational designs of the system. And this is not the only research that's raising concerns. A 2024 study of language model resume screening systems found that they favored white-associated names in a large majority of the conditions that the researchers tested. Black men experienced some of the most consistently unfavorable outcomes. And another audit of GPT-based hiring decisions found that the models produced different resume assessments based on names that it associated with race and gender. And when the model generated resumes itself, women were often assigned less experience, while Asian and Hispanic candidates were more frequently given non-US education, immigrant backgrounds, or non-native English characteristics. And other studies have produced different directions of bias, including models that favor women or particular racial groups in certain circumstances. That inconsistency, though, doesn't make the technology safer. It demonstrates that the bias can vary by model, occupation, prompt, data set, and product configuration. One model may disadvantage black men. Another may overcorrect and disadvantage men in certain industries. A model update could alter the results again. Recent benchmarking research has found that every model tested exhibited some form of racial or gender bias, even though the magnitude and direction differed considerably. The lesson is that no universal certification that an AI model is simply unbiased exists. Fairness has to be evaluated in a specific employment context where this technology is being used. And now laws are beginning to reflect some of this reality. Existing federal employment discrimination laws already apply when employers use AI. Title VII, the ADA, and the Age Discrimination in Employment Act do not create an exemption because a decision was recommended by a software. The Equal Employment Opportunity Commission has repeatedly emphasized that employers remain responsible when an automated selection process produces unlawful discrimination or adverse impact. The most consequential legal test in the United States about all this is probably going on right now in the ongoing case of Mobley versus Workday. Derek Mobley alleges that Workday's applicant screening technology discriminated against him and other applicants based on race, age, or disability. And Mobley claims that he was rejected for more than 100 positions at companies using Workday technology, frequently receiving automated rejections very shortly after submitting an application. Workday, for its part, denies that its tools make hiring decisions, and it maintains that employers control how the technology is configured and used. And the case is important because it raises the question of whether an HR technology provider can itself be held responsible when its software materially participates in screening and evaluating applicants. And a federal court has allowed significant portions of the case to proceed, including allegations that Workday systems may screen out applicants using factors such as employment gaps that could function as proxies for disability. The court has also permitted a collective age discrimination claim to move forward. And as of June 2026, Workday had failed to secure dismissal of most of the plaintiffs' amended claims. The final outcome of this case remains unresolved, and the allegations have not yet been proven, but still the case sends an unmistakable message. Employers can't assume that buying an AI tool transfers their legal responsibility to the vendor, and vendors can't assume that describing their system as just a decision support tool rather than a decision-making tool will automatically shield them from scrutiny. So what should HR leaders do? Well, first, you should inventory every automated system you're using that influences hiring. This includes obvious tools such as resume ranking software and video interview assessments, but it also includes sourcing algorithms, candidate matching systems, job ad targeting, chatbots, assessment tools, fraud detection tools, scheduling systems, and even generative AI tools used informally by recruiters. Second, you should determine exactly what each system is optimizing. Is it predicting who will receive an offer, who will remain employed, who resembles a previous successful hire, or who's more likely to respond to a recruiting message? Those are different objectives, and each can produce historical inequities or reward the wrong outcome. Third, you should test your outcomes continuously rather than just relying on a vendor pre-deployment audit. Employers should evaluate things like selection rates, rankings, rejection patterns, failures to accommodate candidates, false positives, and candidate drop-off rates across things like gender, race, age, disability, and other legally protected groups. And testing should be repeated after the models get updated, configuration changes, or new job families are introduced. And fourth, ensure meaningful human review. Human oversight should involve more than allowing a recruiter to approve what the system recommends. Reviewers must understand what factors influence the recommendation, have enough time and authority to challenge it if needed, and be trained to recognize when the system may be using an inappropriate proxy. And last, give candidates notice, accessible alternatives, and a way to request reconsideration. A person should not lose access to employment because a video tool cannot interpret their disability, or an employment gap is misclassified, or an automated screening tool can't recognize a non-traditional career path. Providers of AI hiring technology also have equally important responsibilities. They should make their models, objectives, data sources, limitations, and validation methods more transparent. They should test intersectional outcomes, because examining race and gender separately can miss the distinct experience, say, of Black women or older women or disabled workers or other groups. And they should prevent customer data and hiring outcomes from being uncontrolled feedback loops that teach models to just repeat past patterns. And they should provide employers with the information and tools necessary to monitor their results after deployment. AI could ultimately make hiring more consistent, broaden access to opportunity, and identify capable people who traditional processes might overlook. Research on exploration-based hiring algorithms have even shown that systems deliberately designed to consider underrepresented candidates can improve both candidate quality and demographic diversity. But those kinds of benefits don't emerge automatically. A hiring system learns from the goals we establish, the information we provide, the outcomes we reward, and the decisions we allow it to repeat. When efficiency is the only objective, the system may learn that the fastest path is to narrow the candidate pool, reinforce historical patterns, and convert random outcomes into permanent assumptions about entire groups of people. The central question for HR leaders is no longer whether AI will influence hiring. It already does. The question is whether organizations will govern these systems rigorously enough to ensure they expand human opportunity rather than quietly restricting it. Because when an algorithm helps determine who receives an interview, who receives an opportunity, and who is never seen by a human being, fairness can't be an optional feature. It has to be one of the system's primary measures of success. That's it for the show today. A big thank you to WorkHuman for supporting the Workplace Minute. Be sure to subscribe to the HR Happy Hour Network on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Steve Boese, and this has been the Workplace Minute from H3 HR Advisors.